Most people spend their lives trying to be happier. They chase more money, a better job, a bigger house, a perfect relationship, and the approval of everyone around them. They believe that if they can just eliminate enough problems, life will finally become easy. But what if that's the wrong goal? What if happiness isn't about having fewer problems, but about choosing better ones? That is the central idea behind The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck by Mark Manson. Unlike many self-help books that tell you to think positively, visualize success, or believe that anything is possible, this book begins with a completely different message. Life is difficult. You will always have problems. You will always experience disappointment. You will always fail at something. And strangely enough, accepting these facts is exactly what makes life better. Manson argues that the problem isn't that we care too much. The real problem is that we care about the wrong things. We waste enormous amounts of emotional energy worrying about what strangers think of us, comparing ourselves with people on social media, chasing status, trying to appear successful, or trying to avoid every uncomfortable feeling. Meanwhile, the things that truly matter, our health, our relationships, our values, and our character, often receive much less attention. Life gives every one of us only a limited amount of attention. Imagine your attention as a wallet. Every day, you wake up with only a certain number of emotional coins. Every complaint, every argument online, every unnecessary comparison, every small annoyance spends one of those coins. Before long, you've spent your entire emotional budget on things that will never improve your life. Mark Manson calls this giving too many fucks. His advice isn't to stop caring altogether. That would be impossible. Instead, learn to become extremely selective. Choose carefully what deserves your attention. Ignore the rest. This simple shift changes everything. For example, imagine someone leaves a rude comment under your video. You have two choices. The first is to spend hours thinking about it, defending yourself, checking replies, and wondering why someone dislikes you. The second is to remind yourself that one stranger's opinion changes nothing about your mission. The comment exists. You don't have to live inside it. The same principle applies to almost every area of life. You cannot control the economy. You cannot control other people's opinions. You cannot control luck. But you can always control where your attention goes. One of the strongest ideas in the book is that every meaningful life requires struggle. Most people dream about living without problems. But Manson says that's impossible. Problems never disappear. They simply change. The successful entrepreneur worries about managing employees. The parent worries about raising children. The athlete worries about staying healthy. The artist worries about creating better work. Nobody escapes problems. The difference is that successful people choose problems worth having. Instead of asking, how can I avoid difficulty? Ask, what difficulty is worth suffering for? That single question changes how you approach your career, your relationships, your health, and even your dreams. Many people want success. Very few want the daily sacrifices that success requires. Many people want to become fit. Few enjoy exercising consistently. Many people want a successful business. Few enjoy years of uncertainty, rejection, and learning. The reward always comes packaged together with the struggle. You cannot separate them. That's why happiness isn't found by avoiding pain. It's found by choosing meaningful pain. And once you understand that, life stops feeling unfair. Instead of asking, why is this happening to me? You begin asking, is this a price worth paying? That is a much more powerful question. Another powerful lesson in the book is that you are always responsible for your choices, even when you are not responsible for what happened to you. This idea often surprises people. There is a huge difference between fault and responsibility. Something terrible may happen that is completely outside your control. You may lose your job because of an economic recession. Someone may betray your trust. You may experience illness, failure, or heartbreak. None of those events are necessarily your fault. But your response is always your responsibility. This distinction changes everything. Imagine two people who lose the same job. The first spends years blaming the company, the economy, or bad luck. He waits for life to become fair again. The second accepts the disappointment, updates her skills, starts applying for new opportunities, and slowly builds a better career. Both experienced the same event. Only one accepted responsibility for what came next. Mark Manson argues that this mindset creates freedom. When you stop waiting for the world to change, you regain the ability to change yourself. That doesn't make life easier. It makes you stronger. The book also challenges another common belief. Failure is not the opposite of success. It is part of success. Many people avoid failure because they think it defines them. But failure is simply information. Every mistake tells you something that success never could. A business owner learns more from a failed product than from an easy sale. An athlete improves by discovering weaknesses. A writer becomes better by rewriting terrible first drafts. Progress always requires correction. The problem is that modern culture encourages perfection. Social media shows polished highlights, but hides thousands of invisible failures. As a result, people begin comparing their everyday reality to someone else's carefully edited success. That comparison destroys confidence. Manson reminds us that every expert was once a beginner. Every successful person has experienced embarrassment, rejection, and disappointment. The difference is not that they avoided failure. The difference is that they stopped treating failure as proof that they should quit. Another central idea concerns values. According to Manson, the quality of your life depends largely on the quality of the values you choose. Many people measure themselves using values they cannot control. For example, I'll only be happy if everyone likes me. I'll only feel successful if I become richer than my friends. I'll only feel worthy if I never make mistakes. These values create endless anxiety because they depend on outside circumstances. Instead, Manson recommends choosing values that remain within your control. For example, being honest, learning every day, keeping promises, improving 1% at a time, treating people with respect, finishing meaningful work. These values don't depend on luck. They depend on decisions. And decisions remain available every single day. When your values improve, your problems improve too. One of the most memorable concepts in the book is what Manson calls the feedback loop from hell. It works like this. You feel anxious. Then you become anxious because you're anxious. You feel guilty. Then you feel guilty for feeling guilty. You feel lonely. Then you criticize yourself for feeling lonely. Now you have two problems instead of one. The original emotion and your judgment about having that emotion. This creates an endless emotional spiral. Manson argues that breaking this cycle begins with acceptance. Instead of fighting every uncomfortable feeling, notice it. Allow it to exist. Feel disappointed without believing that disappointment means your life is broken. Feel afraid without assuming fear makes you weak. Emotions are temporary. Your resistance often lasts much longer than the emotion itself. Ironically, accepting difficult emotions usually allows them to disappear more quickly. This idea connects to another major theme throughout the book. You don't become emotionally stronger by avoiding discomfort. You become emotionally stronger by learning that discomfort is survivable. Confidence is not the absence of fear. Confidence is evidence that you have survived fear before. Each challenge becomes proof that you are more capable than you once believed. That is why growth almost always feels uncomfortable. If life always feels comfortable, you're probably repeating what you already know instead of expanding beyond it. There is another lesson in this book that may be the hardest to accept. Stop trying to find yourself. Modern culture constantly tells us to discover who we truly are. Mark Manson argues that this can become another trap. The more tightly you hold on to an identity, the harder it becomes to grow. If you believe, I'm just not a confident person, you stop putting yourself into situations that could build confidence. If you believe, I'm bad at business, you avoid learning the skills that successful entrepreneurs develop. If you believe, I'm the smart one, you may begin avoiding challenges because failure would threaten your identity. The labels we place on ourselves often become invisible prisons. Instead of asking, who am I? Ask, who am I becoming? That small change keeps your mind flexible. It reminds you that every decision is shaping a future version of yourself. Growth requires letting go of old identities. The book also explores one of the deepest questions in life. What gives life meaning? Many people assume meaning comes after success, after more money, after recognition, after reaching some future goal. Manson disagrees. Meaning comes from responsibility. It comes from choosing something larger than yourself, helping your family, creating useful work, building something valuable, serving a community, improving a skill. These responsibilities create purpose because they direct your attention towards something worthwhile. Ironically, The more your life revolves around only yourself, the less meaningful it often feels. Purpose grows through contribution. Near the end of the book, Manson introduces another uncomfortable truth. One day, every one of us will die. That sounds depressing, but he believes remembering death can actually improve life. When we understand that our time is limited, we naturally become more selective. We stop wasting years trying to impress people we barely know. We stop chasing goals that don't actually matter. We stop postponing the things we've always wanted to do. Mortality gives urgency to our choices. Life becomes more meaningful precisely because it is finite. If you remember only one lesson from this book, let it be this. You do not need to care less. You need to care better. Your attention is one of the most valuable resources you possess. Spend it intentionally. Care deeply about your health. Care deeply about your family. Care deeply about your work. Care deeply about honesty. Care deeply about becoming a better person than you were yesterday. But don't waste your limited emotional energy on every criticism, every comparison, every argument, every trend, or every opinion that passes across your screen. Every time you choose what deserves your attention, you are also choosing the direction of your life. That is the subtle art. Not becoming cold, not becoming indifferent, not pretending nothing matters, but understanding that because everything cannot matter equally, you must decide what truly does. And once your values become clearer, your decisions become simpler. Your relationships become healthier. Your confidence becomes quieter. Your life becomes lighter. Not because the world changed, but because you changed what deserved your attention. That may be the most valuable lesson Mark Manson has to offer. If you enjoyed this summary, subscribe to One Book in 10 Minutes. Every day, we transform the world's most influential books into clear, practical lessons you can apply immediately. One book, 10 minutes. A better life.